Really excited to be here today to talk about a project that we are moving forward with the city and Public Works and a lot of our other partners, the MPO and the Planning Department and others. And I want to give you an overview of the project itself, but also the process. And yesterday, I thought the sessions here were so great that when I went home, I actually got really motivated about, what is BRT? And I know most of us think that BRT, the B in BRT stands for bus. But I got really excited last night and I thought, well, I need to start thinking up some better names. So what about bodacious rapid transit? Maybe beautiful rapid transit. And then last I came up with bargain. So the most exciting one was bodacious. But I think you can make the argument that bus rapid transit really is all of those things, actually. And I want to talk a little bit about, what is bus rapid transit from the aspects of what it is that makes it special. And really what you're doing with bus rapid transit is you're taking all of the elements of rail type systems and you're putting them into a bus system. So we have advanced vehicles that we're talking about. These are vehicles with wide doors. They're hybrid technology in terms of the drivetrain. You're looking at systems, or bus rapid transit would be a system that has dedicated right-of-way. So one of the most important factors in keeping vehicles on time and moving them efficiently is the ability to not be impeded by traffic. And so dedicated right-of-ways, obviously that's one of the elements of rail systems as well. Real-time travel information, that's very important. We have that now on our buses with automatic vehicle location, AVL systems. We can push out information to our customers about where the bus is and when it'll be arriving. That's something we'll be pushing out on the bus rapid transit system as well. Stations, these are all things that come from rail systems that we are talking about implementing on bus rapid transit. And then lastly, fast and frequent service. So really the key element of making BRT work is having it be fast and efficient. So when you put all those things on a bus, you get a really ugly graphic. But I think what I wanted to say is what you really get is, I couldn't get the sound into my system, so. Oh, bummer. Here we go. There we go, sorry. Oh, my jokes never work when I get up here. So bionic rapid transit. I mean, I really think that bus rapid transit is taking transit to the next level. It's bigger, it's faster, it's stronger, just like Steve Austin with the $6 Million Man. So with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about the process. So this is a somewhat complicated diagram, but I kind of wanted to show you overall what we've been doing and how we're going through this. So the circle up here on the left of the screen is kind of the planning context, what's going on in the nation and in Nashville. You put that into the funnel on the right side, which is the analysis. And at the top of the analysis, you have a process that we're required to go through when you're applying for federal funds. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. And then when you get down to the bottom, hopefully you have a project that's defined and everybody's happy with. So a lot of you are going to be familiar with some of the work that the MPO is doing, and I'm going to skip through some of those slides fairly quickly because I want to get to Joe Calabrese's presentation, and he'll probably recognize a lot of the pictures that we have in here out of Cleveland because that's one of the model systems in the country, and we're really looking to that system to kind of guide some of our work. So in terms of the planning context, what's going on in the nation with bus rapid transit? Well, this is from the National Bus Rapid Transit Institute, and it represents cities that have bus rapid transit or bus rapid transit light, or cities that are planning it. So if we think we're in a silo in terms of looking at bus rapid transit, we are not. There are a lot of folks out there that are moving this technology, this transit technology forward, and we're kind of catching up. Now in terms of locally, we obviously work very closely with the MPO, and again, I know you've seen a lot of this data. The MPO covers a 5-county area plus a little extra. We have the RTA, which covers 10 counties, and we do the planning for that as well. And we are planning this bus rapid transit system really as kind of the keystone or the cornerstone, whatever you want to call it, to all of this regional transit that came through Michael's MPO planning process. You've seen this graphic before too. On the left of the slide, this is the map of the region. The black spots on the map are basically areas that are affected by development or were affected by development in 1965. Kind of the middle map there shows development as it was in 2008 or so, and projecting current trends, the map on the right is where we expect development to be in 2035, the time frame of the regional plan from the MPO. So that's probably not an image, most of us aren't going to be wanting to live here if it looks like that in the future. In addition, we've been learning really since the 60s or maybe even since the 50s that congestion is a function of too many cars, in a small space, basically. And what you have on the left of the screen here is a map of the region that shows recurring congestion. The red lines on the map show recurring congestion based on volume alone. So this isn't an accident on I-24 or I-65. This is simply too many cars trying to squeeze onto too small of a space on the roadway. The map on the right, Nashville's in the middle of that center there with the counties surrounding it. The map on the right shows the projected congestion in 2035 after the MPO has invested $4 billion, all of the federal funds that we get plus local funds in the community on projects. So again, I think that the message from the MPO on this is that we understand that we can't physically build our way out of congestion, and we're going to need to start thinking outside the box and thinking about transit. The Texas Transportation Institute has done several studies. They do one every year, basically, and the cost of congestion to the region is substantial. $624 million annually, equating to over $15 billion over a 25-year period. So the $4 billion drop in the bucket that we have to try to solve the congestion issues is not going to be enough. Again, we're going to need to kind of think outside the box. We talked a lot about this yesterday in terms of the relationship of health and transportation. And we're learning, and it's sort of been coming out in the last couple of years, that there's a direct correlation to places that have a high level of transit service and obesity. And I'm not going to go through these grades, I guess, as it were, but the fact of the matter is, we have an issue in Tennessee, and it's something that we need to be thinking about moving forward. As Gary said, we're expected to have nearly 1 million people moving into Nashville over this next 20 plus years. And this graphic basically just shows the larger bar kind of in the middle of the screen. That's 2008. And that's where we were at 1.7 million as a region, which put us on par in that time with Austin and Charlotte, they have dedicated funding for transit, and they have substantial transit systems. So those are some of our competitor cities that we're competing with for jobs and relocations and kind of the knowledge workers, et cetera. Well, on the right, the bar on the furthest right is 2035, and that's the population plus 850,000 people, almost 1 million folks. That would put us about the same size as Denver is today. So just to give you kind of some mental images of what Nashville is going to be like in 20 years in terms of size. So where are all those people going to go? And if you've been to my presentation before, you've probably seen this slide, and I always ask the question, is this Photoshop or is this real? Okay, no takers? It is not Photoshop, it is real. It's a Katy Highway outside of Houston, Texas. Widest highway in the world, 26 lanes at some point, and this actually isn't even a photo of the widest section of it. But the thing that I find most enlightening about this slide is that which is the peak direction? Where's everybody going, right? They built a gazillion lanes and the cars are still filling them up. So again, just kind of reiterates the point that we've got to be investing in opportunities that are different from single occupant vehicles. So how will those folks get around? Well, here's a picture of bus rapid transit as it is in Cleveland, and I'm sure Joe will be talking about this here in a little bit. Basically emulating rail type service with rubber tire vehicles. Again, another shot of that. Bus rapid transit with stations, with dedicated right-of-way, with modern vehicles, level boarding, off-board fare collection, pretty much everything that you would do in a subway, just above ground and using rubber tire vehicles. So through this, within this context, the MPO team has been fantastic, Michael and his team, in putting together a plan that puts its number one tenet as a bold new vision for transit in our community. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. We basically have been talking about adding high capacity transit throughout the region, not just in downtown. We've been talking about adding transit services to smaller communities, Laverne, Smyrna, Gallatin, you name it. And we really see the East-West Connector as the cornerstone to making all of that successful. So now I'll start talking about the project a little bit. I won't get into all the details on the map. You've probably seen those before. But the point is that if you take a look, it's pretty much a radial system that comes into downtown. And once they get here, they're going to need a place, or they're going to need a system that gets them to their jobs or to the places that they want to go efficiently. So this is a map of the entire corridor. It's roughly 7.5 miles. Runs from West Nashville, about White Bridge Road area, out to 5 Points in East Nashville. And I do want to take a little bit of time to talk about some of the details of the actual project itself. At this time, we are looking at about 92% of that corridor will be in a dedicated right-of-way, which is really phenomenal considering we are not talking about taking major portions of land. We're basically squeezing that within the roadway as much as possible. In terms of looking at the actual stations, the yellow line on the map represents the basically dedicated right-of-way area. A blue line on the map represents an area where we go down to a single dedicated lane. And in that case, the way that would operate would be like a train. So if we had two buses that were heading in opposite directions and they kind of met up at that single lane, then one bus would be held up by a stop and allow the other bus to go through before it could do that. So we have stations, basically a couple on the west end, out the St. Thomas hospital area where a lot of jobs are, and folks use that for services. And then we have a couple in the community out there. Moving east through the corridor, we've got several stations kind of through the Midtown area, around Vanderbilt, HCA. We are actually, as a result of the announcement of the HCA project that's going to be there around 17th, we are actually looking at relocating one of the stations. We had initially pushed it a little bit further west, but with HCA coming in there, it kind of makes a lot of sense that we could be their front door and really serve their trips very well. We'll have a stop at the Gulch, basically around 12th, and then a few coming into town towards downtown. And right now, it's looking like we'll have a station at 5th and Broadway with a jog up 5th and then over to Commerce. So initially we had proposed going through downtown on 3rd Avenue, but working with the community, we realized that it might make a little bit more sense to have a station right there as the entry into the Broadway kind of downtown area, and then just loop around it. So we have the station basically at 5th and Broad, heading up to Church on Commerce, and then a side station on Commerce. If you can see on the map here, it loops up around Music City Central. And that's really critical because, as I said, in terms of the hub for all these regional services, this is a location where all of those regional services go. So you could catch a bus in Gallatin, get off at Music City Central, hop on this, and zip out in a dedicated lane to your job at Vanderbilt or to a doctor's appointment anywhere along that corridor. On the east side, we're talking about going across the river using Woodland Street Bridge and then cutting over to Main on 5th. So we'd have a station in front of LP Field, which we could use, take advantage of all the folks that park over there and ride across the river into downtown, as well as all the economic development opportunities on the Main Street side. And then we did initially only have 2 stations proposed, I would say, in the East Nashville area, but that community has been very, very supportive of this project and is looking to increase access, and so we work with them to do that. The turnaround right now is proposed to be at around the library out there, if you're familiar with that area, basically around 10th, and we would have a park and ride lot at the library, as well as having a park and ride lot at kind of the St. Thomas side of town over there by White Bridge Road. Okay, so that's sort of the context. Now, in terms of the analysis, we've been doing this for a little while now. We started basically in January of 2011. And I'll go through these kind of quickly because, again, I don't want to take up any of Joe's time. But the way the process goes in terms of good planning is you think of it as a funnel. At the top of the funnel, we do what's called an alternative analysis, where we look at all the technologies, what makes the most sense, what should we be looking at to solve the transportation problem in that corridor. As we go through the process, we kind of refine the analysis. We get into what's called preliminary engineering, and that's where we really refine the cost as well. And then when that process is done, you get down to the end of the funnel and you get down to final design, at which point, when you're coming out from there, you can go into construction. So we began the alternatives analysis in 2011, and I've got some maps that there's no way you're going to be able to read. It's really like a Rorschach test. But I did want to show this to you because this is something that came through our master planning process. It's a tool that we use to kind of analyze where people are going. And I'll zoom in a little bit here to see. So using data from the MPO model, we can determine where people are traveling. And this is not just bus riders, this is pretty much anyone within Davidson County. The larger the circle is on the map, the more people are traveling there. And this really emphasizes that the Broadway West End corridor is the corridor to be selecting. You can see the biggest circle is really Vanderbilt, HCA, St. Thomas out there at White Bridge Road. That's not going to show up on here. So, I just think it emphasizes the fact that it makes sense for us to be doing this corridor. There's 170,000 jobs within a half mile of this corridor. There's 25,000 residents that live in this corridor right now, and this is the corridor that has all of our entertainment on it. So LP Field, the arena, it's really a place that even visitors, 11 million visitors come to Nashville annually. So they could use this system as well. I'm not going to go through these. But working with the MPO in this first phase, in that alternatives analysis, we realized that there's going to be a growth in traffic in the corridor over 50%. And so how are we going to address that? Well, when HCA brings their headquarters in and we can put a stop in front of their facility, now folks can get to work on our system instead of getting in a car and taking up space on the roadway. There'll be an increase in the folks living on the corridor and obviously people working in the corridor. We're kind of going down in the funnel now. One of the things that we did early on also is identify the markets, right? So one of the things you have to figure out when you're looking at a transit system and a transit improvement is who's going to be using the service. And again, this corridor is so key to the success of Nashville and really I would argue the region with the regional entertainment facilities, with the regional centers like the 3 hospital complexes. I mean, it's really the place to be. And then there's also, of course, your everyday trips where folks run around doing errands, et cetera. We also, through that process, looked at a lot of different factors in terms of cost and flexibility and comfort, permanence, that's really important. We looked at BRT and streetcar, those kind of floated to the top in that initial phase, and really BRT won out. The reason BRT won out is that the ridership on that, basically 4,500 trips a day, and these are early estimates, we're refining those as we go through it, versus 4,800 trips a day for streetcar, and the range of cost on the BRT at 136 to 150 million or so versus 270 upwards to 300 million for the streetcar. So it just makes sense. I think that the future of transit systems in the country is going to be bus rapid transit with dedicated lanes. We also looked at the frequency of the service. Obviously, that's so important. We're talking about a bus every 10 minutes. So if you walk out to a station, you're not going to need to wait likely more than 5 minutes to catch a vehicle getting you to downtown. And on weekends, every 20 minutes or so. In terms of the system itself and its design, the stations will be in the middle of the road. They will have an access, basically a light just for pedestrians, and folks will be able to get to the station through that light or through that signal. That requires buses with doors on both sides. As you can see on this graphic, the red area is the areas that are dedicated to the bus, so no vehicles are allowed to travel in those areas. In terms of the traffic movements, what we will have is a sort of a mountable barrier probably in the middle of the busway, so the cars will not be able to make left turns across and try to get into that lane. The way we'll be handling that is folks will be able to queue up to a left turn lane at a light where they'll be able to have a legal U-turn and get around. The way that also we are able to add all of these signals to Broadway West End without breaking Broadway West End is that the signal for the station is tied into the signal at the intersection. So really there is no delay that occurs as a result of us doing that. Also, we have engaged the consultant team to look at the streetscaping. Obviously, one of the most important things to do when you are looking at a transit system is take care of the pedestrian, because on either end of the trip, they're going to be a pedestrian. So we are looking at improving the infrastructure, wider sidewalks, street trees, benches, and having those at stations that kind of reach out into the community. So this isn't necessarily a linear project in terms of the streets. Oh gosh. in terms of the streets. Time's up. In terms of the streetscaping, but it is a way to kind of take this project and expand its reach a little bit. So that is kind of in a very short, high-level view where we are in the project. Right now, we're sort of at the preliminary engineering phase of that funnel, and the next steps with that will be to finalize the preliminary engineering. We're waiting for guidance from the Federal Transit Administration on how to apply for funding. This project is going to require federal funding for us to move it forward, and then we'll begin to start preparing for the next phases of the project as well. Kind of going back to that funnel, hopefully when we wrap this all up, this is an image of BRT, of West End, basically around 27th, and then this is kind of something that we hope it will look like when we're done with the project. Hope our stations may be even cooler looking than that. So that being said, we've got a lot of information available on this on our website. We've got Twitter and Facebook information, and I'll put that up here for you, and I'll wrap it up and turn it over to Joe. So happy to take questions. I think the best thing to do is we let Joe go because I really want to hear from him, and then we can take questions at the end if you have any for us. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Name is Joe Calabrese from the Greater Cleveland RTA. My pleasure certainly to be here. Thanks for the invitation and congratulations. What a great crowd, what a great day. Good to be here to see some of my friends in Nashville and see some of my friends from Cleveland. So it's a great thing. I was asked to come here and talk about our success story. We started this process. We were in about 2000, 2001 where I think Nashville is today. And what we've done has been very successful. I could spend almost all of my time giving presentations and tours. I know we've had the people from Nashville up 2 or 3 different times, and I came here kind of with my goods. If it seems like I'm giving a 1-hour presentation in 15 minutes, it's because I am. Little overview of who we are. We're the Regional Transit Authority in Cleveland. We serve about 200,000 people a day. We have a true multimodal system. Buses, heavy rail, light rail, and our newest, which I'll be talking here about mostly today, is our bus rapid transit system. We have 24, not buses, they're rapid transit vehicles. Our definition, I wish I thought of some of the futures, but ours is just better rapid transit. We don't use the term bus at all in the process. We have a very, very comprehensive bus system that really radiates into downtown. The rail system started back in the 1920s. With the Shaker Rapids coming in from the east side. The heavy rail system started back in the 1950s coming into downtown. We did a light rail extension in 1996 to connect downtown with the lakefront area, so a very comprehensive system. When we looked at what do we do on Euclid Avenue, we really had a lot of pieces. We knew what worked, we knew the advantages and I think disadvantages of the different modes of transit, and through this process, again, we selected as well bus rapid transit on Euclid Avenue. Kind of interesting, I saw the picture before of the trolleys in the streetcars in Nashville. This is an old view of Euclid Avenue, very streetcar oriented, very public transit oriented. This is the main street of Cleveland. Tremendous ridership, tremendous utilization, a lot of retail, a lot of mansions. This is where it was. It was the place to be. The streetcars disappeared in 1954. The number 6 bus line replaced. That was a great bus line, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, peak hour, 7-minute service, but did not attract the choice rider. Only attracted really high ridership, but really the transit-dependent riders. We went through the alternative analysis as you've gone through here. Do we build a subway, light rail, do nothing, bus rapid transit? Actually, the voters in 1950 voted to build a subway to connect our 2 biggest employment centers, Public Square and University Circle. It was $1 billion. $1 billion back then was like real money, not like today. It was going to be a county project. This is certainly before the formation of RTA. Believe it or not, back then the county highway engineer was not public transit oriented, so the project really never went forward. But the thought process, the planning process, and the need, I think, continued. We wanted to be able to develop a system that served 30,000 customers a day. Certainly getting federal money was important. Our analysis was that it would cost about 1/3 the cost to build BRT as rail. Those same numbers also were true for operating, about 1/3 the operating cost as rail. Again, we had pretty good rail experience running operating 4 different rail lines in Cleveland. 2 primary goals of the project. One was to have a real first-class mode of public transportation. That was my primary goal, with a close second being, what can we do to regenerate economic development along this beautiful Main Street? That was many people's primary goal for the project, but the 1-2 were, I think, very, very close. The decision was BRT for obvious reasons. There were a few people who said it should be rail or nothing. I said, in that case, it would be nothing. That really isn't good for our community. So we set out to build a very rail-like image BRT. My mantra was fast, simple, safe, and first class. We created a lot of firsts in the industry, and those firsts are now, I think, available to other cities. 9.3-mile corridor, we reduced 108 bus stops to 36 stations. Through some of the techniques that was just talked about, we reduced travel time from 40 minutes to 28. Much more than a public transit project, building face to building face, roads, sidewalks, curbs, landscape planting, irrigation, 1,500 trees, and the whole ball of wax. We did a lot with the renderings. This is a picture of Euclid Avenue, very different than the pictures you saw 40 years earlier. Really major disinvestment. Building owners weren't reinvesting in their properties, and it showed. So the images we showed in Cleveland is to transform this into this. Again, transform this into this, center medians, exclusive lanes, some kind of a high-tech vehicle, new roadways, new sidewalks, new trees, buried the overhead wires, and really create a much better environment for the community. We're able to achieve full funding grant status. This was the first full funding grant agreement for a New Starts project that wasn't on steel wheels, it was on rubber tires. We spent about $200 million in total. The funding plan was 50% FTA, 25% the state. State provides very little, almost no operating assistance for public transit. We were able to get some money for this project. RTA, the city, and the MPO contributed the difference. Strong support by the Chamber of Commerce. This was the #1 project in the region for years, not because they were so interested in a better public transportation system. They were more interested in something that would help redevelop the old Main Street, bring back, resurge some momentum. The Chamber had major corporate leaders promoting the system. Probably the 800-pound gorilla in Cleveland in terms of corporate leaders is Toby Cosgrove. Toby is head of the Cleveland Clinic, the #1 employer in the region, the 2nd biggest employer in the state next to Walmart. And Toby himself was also out there promoting this system.
Dr. Toby Cosgrove, heart surgeon and CEO, the Cleveland Clinic.
I cannot stress enough the importance of healthy arteries. The entire system depends on them to function properly. In some cases, a complete reconstruction is necessary to ensure a longer, healthier future. I'm pleased to report that the Euclid corridor is one major artery well on its way to recovery.
Restoring Euclid Avenue, the historic link between downtown Cleveland and University Circle, isn't just wishful thinking. It's happening now. Soon everyone can look forward to riding state-of-the-art bus rapid transits along a landscaped, tree-lined, and redeveloped Euclid Avenue. And just as important, it will provide over 4,000 jobs along the way.
It's great for the heart of the city.
The $200 million Euclid Corridor project is just part of the $2.3 billion in projects starting soon throughout our city. And another reason we can all believe in Cleveland.
Definitely driven by the business community. A couple quick renderings. Downtown Euclid Avenue. I don't know if you can see this, but exclusive lanes for public transit on both ways. Here's a station in the center. Vehicles pull up on both sides like a center platform rail line would. Works out very, very well. Did a lot with updated landscaping, streetscape, sidewalks, pocket parking, as you can see. Major innovations and investments. In the Midtown corridor, we did things a little differently. Although the stations are still in the median, they're not a single station, they're station pairs. In this area, we actually could have typical buses with doors on the right side also enter the corridor to have their trips on those routes quicker as well. We also tried to fit in as we could, not the entire length of the corridor, but through most of it bike lanes as well, which really, I think, add to the pedestrian friendliness of the corridor. Great stuff. Some of the rail-like characteristics we've already talked about this morning, to reduce the travel times, the exclusive right-of-way, the traffic signal prioritization. Actually, our lane is 35 miles per hour, where the general use auto lane is 25 miles per hour. Precision docking, level boarding, things we stole from some European countries. The off-board fare collection really helps. Our system, like the number 6, operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 5 minutes in the peak period. We went from 5 minutes to 10 minutes after 9 o'clock in the morning. Now we've had to go from 5 minutes to 7 minutes after 9 because we're overloaded. Really good problems for us to have. Just some of the photos. You see the traffic signals that control the rapid transit vehicles on the left, the rail-type signal, not to confuse our customers. The level boarding, precision docking, quick on and off, no steps, no tripping, again, more rail-like. The off-board fare collection, each of the 36 station pairs have ticket vending machines. Our transit police get on and off vehicles on a random basis and say, can I please see your paid receipt? That provides the quick on and off. It also provides that level of security and safety for our customers. Real-time information, emergency call boxes, cameras in the stations, cameras in the vehicles, cameras on the corridor. The two things that we really focused on a lot as the Transit Authority is when the project was done, it was going to very much look like a really innovative highway streetscape project where the stations and the vehicles. One of the stations and the vehicles would be very special, spent a lot of time, a lot of design charrettes in the community to design the stations, which was a lot of fun. But I think we came up with something that was substantial but didn't take away from the architecture. We've got some beautiful architecture in Cleveland. As you can see them here. The vehicle was the other issue. There really was no vehicle that crossed between a bus and a train that served our needs. We worked with a major manufacturer. We spent a couple million in design money to redesign with them a vehicle that was more rail-like, 63-foot long, articulated, hybrid electric propulsion. There really is something that works well for us and really makes a statement on the street. A lot of landscaping, public art. I mentioned 1,500 trees. Where we couldn't put trees, we worked with the Downtown Association on a planter program, as you see here. But the big key, as I mentioned, is economic development. I've got a few videos, short videos for people who talk about, what they feel it means. And one of these is from one of our guests who will be speaking after myself, Dick Pace. First of all, we were tracking economic development very closely. I told the story this morning, and we were tracking $2.5 billion of economic development. Unlike here in Nashville, our newspaper sometimes questions what we do and what we say. So we had a reporter come in. One of the senior reporters said, Joe, you're out giving speeches about $2.5 billion. We don't believe that number. Where did it come from? So we sat down, we gave our information. This was, and I also have a problem with headline writers, but this was the headline in the Sunday paper 3 weeks later called The Rebirth. I couldn't come up with a better headline. But Steve Litt says, Joe, you were wrong. It's not $2.5 billion, it's $4.3 billion. I said, Steve, you're right. I'm sorry. I'll use your number from now on. But we were looking at Euclid Avenue. He said, you've got to look a couple blocks either side of Euclid Avenue. You're right. We'll use your number from now. Right now it's over $5 billion. Very, very positive. He also did a 1 year after story. And this was during the construction. The 1 year after story was during the Great Recession, and almost everything happening in our region was happening in terms of reinvestment and new investment on Euclid Avenue. Tracy Nichols, the City Economic Development Director, briefly.
Well, when developers come with us and they're riding on that helpline, the first thing they say is, wow, right on that helpline, they see all the things that we have going as far as development's concerned, and people are just flabbergasted. We have so many people wanting to come here and ask, how are we doing it? And I will tell you, the diamond in the tiara is the helpline and all of the development along the helpline.
I'd like to show this picture. This is a picture of a building downtown, 668 Euclid Avenue, as we were under construction. Not something you'd want to be around. This is the building today, just an example, and this is happening in many areas. First floor retail office, major marketing firm, upscale apartments above there. As of last week, there are over 200 people on the waiting list. You can't get an apartment in downtown Cleveland right now. Very positive. Many of these people are living in downtown near Public Square, working on the other end of the line and near the Cleveland Clinic or University Hospital. Dick Pace will talk to you later. Two things we wanted to do is have people reinvest in Euclid Avenue in terms of development, and also get that non-traditional rider on public transit. Dick will talk briefly about both those things.
Without the helpline, we never would have made the investment into this area. Once the helpline was under construction, we were completely committed that we knew that this was going to be a good investment, and it's been great. It's been great for a couple reasons. One is that the tenants use the helpline. The second part is the reinvestment, that leap of faith by the city and RTA to invest in Euclid Avenue. It's made a huge difference.
I'm going to skip a few times. We've got some major downtown development. This was a picture taken about 3 months ago at the other end of the line, University Circle part of the line. This is totally different now. The developer who developed East 4th Street, Ari Marin, his family, great developers, saw the potential. These were one of the groups that weren't all that enthused about what we're doing, didn't see how public transit was going to help them, thought would really help them from a downtown retail perspective was we need more parking. They're strong believers. This is their development now on the other end of the line. These buildings here you see in blue clad are now open. First floor retail, upper floor upscale apartments. This building here in the lower right is a new Museum of Contemporary Art that just opened up. You can't see the new hotel across the street. So the good news is happening all throughout the corridor. Major investments, major contributors on Euclid Avenue, redeveloped buildings. This is a Dick's building at 71st and Euclid, right near the station. New zoning, new transit supportive zoning went in the Midtown area. Buildings closer to the sidewalk, minimum 4 stories, parking in the back, less parking requirements, all things that have made this continue. This is, we took the vehicle to the Cleveland Auto Show for I think 3 or 4 consecutive years. People said, what is that? Where are the, I don't see them laying the tracks on Euclid Avenue, but it really looks very rail-like, as you could imagine. And we spent a lot of time developing the brand. This was not the number 6 bus line. This is, we were calling it the Silver Line. This is the Silver Line. It's very upscale. It's very modern. It's very rail-like. At the Cleveland Auto Show in this year, we actually announced the naming rights. Both the 2 major institutions you saw, the clinic and UH, formed an alliance with us, and they bought the naming rights. That's why it was called the Healthline. It couldn't be called the Cleveland Clinic University Hospital Silver Line. It was too long. And no one could agree whose name went first. We actually have the clinic's name on this side first and the UH's name on the other side of the vehicle first. But again, they're contributing money over 25 years for us to reinvest in the corridor, to keep the landscaping great, to clean the stations every day, to clean the vehicles every day, to keep it, again, totally first class. Our motto is pumping new life into the city. That's exactly what we're doing. Very successful. It's now part of our normal operation. Our customers are very positive. 13% of the customers used to take our rail system. Now take this. Why? Because it's more convenient for them. It takes them where they want to go. Ridership increased 48% the first year. It's been increasing about 8 to 12% ever since then. Very positive results. You saw these pictures. The way the stations, the vehicles, the landscaping came together is very positive. It's been won several major awards we're very proud of, and I'll take some questions later as well. Thank you.
We're going to take just a couple of seconds and maybe ask a few questions if you want to. So, questions from the audience? Right here, sir.
Can you talk about the operating expenses in Cleveland and how close we are to covering the costs?
I'm not going to talk about covering the costs. I'll give you some statistic. When we operated the number 6 bus line with 7-minute service, who asked the question? Okay. We had 28 bus operators driving up and down. Right now, there'd be 28 bus drivers driving up and down Euclid Avenue. Because of the travel time savings, our production line goes quicker. I provide more frequent service with 16 bus operators than I did with 28. So my operating cost is much less than it was. I have 60% more riders, so my revenue is higher. And I don't differentiate revenue for this line or that line, so it's much closer to covering its costs than it did before. Now, there's some added maintenance. Again, we clean every station every day. We change over the flowers 3 or 4 times a year. Some of that money comes in from the naming rights and sponsorships, but it's been very successful.
Another question. In the back. Wait, she's coming to you. Well, just say it real loud.
Say it loud. As we move forward in this venture, what is the one thing you would make sure we want to focus on as we move forward? And what is the one thing that you've learned that you would think we would not focus on as we move forward?
No. I think you're focusing on the most important thing, which is develop that brand. It's not a bus line. Okay, it's different. It's that cross mode. It's a new mode of public transportation. And keeping that brand, I think keeping that brand loyalty developing a brand and keeping that brand loyalty is very, very important. I think the most important thing going forward, which you're already doing, like today, is continually meeting with the residents. We had over 1,000 public meetings. We met with, in every church along Euclid Avenue. We met with every council district. We went to the monthly meetings, really getting the information out about what we were doing. And we didn't talk about construction. Construction was a bear. We tore up the streets, and it could be for a year, year and a half in front of people's buildings. So it's really getting their buy-in, which we did. And I think we were very conscious to minimize any disruptions we had along the corridor. I'll give you one example. Public Square, the area downtown, major area in Cleveland, major civic space. We have a couple major events there. July 4th, there's the fireworks, and the Cleveland Orchestra plays on July 4th, which is a great day. Several 100,000 people gather. The next big event there is the Friday after Thanksgiving. We have the tree lighting ceremony. We started construction on July 5th. We ended the day before Thanksgiving. So we really tried to work around community things, not to disrupt the community any more than we had to.
Yes, Joe, you hear across the country about service cuts because of the economy and things like that. But you opened a line, your opening line, 24/7 a day service, which is a pretty big deal. I'm guessing you don't have full system-wide 24/7 service. But talk about how running this line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, really makes a lot of sense. And even DC Metro, they shut down.
Well, traditionally, being an older Northeast city, we always had about 8 to 10 bus routes operate 24/7. So this replaced the number 6 that operated 24/7. And I often get the question, like I'm sure Paul does, I saw the health line at 3 in the morning with only 6 or 7 people on it. I said, well, if you did, those 6 or 7 people probably really needed to be there. Okay, so it's something we do. Our rail system shuts down around 1. It starts up about 4. So we have about 3 hours to do rail maintenance. But it's just important to that corridor, especially with all the healthcare institutions along it.